O'Dwyer on the other side of the world. Welcome to the P Performance Podcast. We had a minor technical difficulty there at the start, but it is great to have you on, and hopefully we have no more. But as always, when we have someone from Tipperary on, I can start with, well, kid, instead of the formalities. So how is everything going in Australia? You have your sweater on, you're deep into winter mode at the moment over there by the looks of things.
Yeah, I suppose thanks for having me on. It's well overdue at this stage. But yeah, no, it's pretty cold over here. I'm kind of jealous looking at year weather at the moment, but hopefully we're heading into spring soon, so it might get a bit warmer.
What is it like at the moment? I saw that the weather in Brisbane is pretty rainy at the moment, but it doesn't rain too often. But from what I hear anyway, is when it rains, it properly rains in Brisbane.
Yeah, definitely. We've been lucky enough the last while. I suppose summer is kind of more of a tropical season where it rains more, but it's just been really cold in the mornings and evenings when we're training, and we're used to, I suppose, sweating in 30-degree heat most pre-seasons, but this one's a bit different. We're layering up, but yeah, it's a different experience, but we're getting used to it.
So you touched on there that you're training a couple of times in a day, like a pretty high frequency. Is the weather playing a part in those trainings? Is it a little bit harder to get up for those early morning sessions when it's bucketing down and rainy? Or are all the Aussies saying to you, you should be used to this, like get on with it?
Oh, they think I should be used to it, but they haven't realised I've been following summer around for the past 3 years, so I'm not used to it at all. But yeah, no, it has been good. We're training. We kind of do 3 field sessions, so 2 of them are the evening, and then 1 is Saturday morning, and then 2 gym sessions as well, which are obviously inside, so they're fine. But yeah, a bit of a struggle getting up them Saturday mornings nice and early, and the same in the evenings as well. We kind of condense the sessions so there's less talking during drills, so people are staying warm and on their toes. So but it's been good, and the girls are getting used to it, and yeah, training hard as usual.
But I'd say you can't wait for the weather to change so that you're coming close into your spring and summer, because obviously the season's starting in August and then running probably into November, is it? Or the end of October. So by the end of the season, and when you're into the business end, essentially, it's going to be getting pretty warm again, I would say. So it's completely different scenario that you find yourself in at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what we're looking forward to as well. This pre-season as well is obviously a lot shorter than usual ones. So it's flying by. And yeah, as you said, we're starting the end of August, round 1, and goes right up hopefully until the end of November, I think, is the grand final. So be pretty hot then. So yeah, looking forward to that. We'll probably see a good few body warmers in the first few rounds, but I'm sure they'll disappear as we go on.
Absolutely. And you touched on there that the preseason is shorter than usual. Have you found any differences in the intensity of the preseason then because it's a shorter window, or have they been looking after you pretty well in that it hasn't been that dissimilar from other seasons that you've had or other preseasons?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing really is we didn't get much of an off season. We had a quick turnaround. I think we had about 6-7 weeks off because we got to a prelim final, and then it was kind of rolling straight back into it. So the staff were aware that a lot of us didn't have much of a break. So I think they were trying to find the balance between training at a very high intensity, but also hoping that the girls didn't burn out or get injured as well. So intensity has really risen a lot this pre-season. We're probably not doing as much volume as we usually would, but the intensity is a lot higher, and we're doing drills at a lot faster pace, and conditioning's a lot more sharper, faster, and as I said, training at more of a max velocity, which I suppose is what we want to get at the end of the day. So feeling fit and strong, which is good heading into the season.
How's the shoulder feeling then? Like, did you have any sort of a lead in? Did they manage you slightly differently in terms of your progression up to that higher intensity, because you obviously had the surgery in the off season? So are you feeling like you're back to your best yet, or are you still kind of keeping tabs on that rehab that you have been doing the whole time?
Yeah, I suppose physios and staff have been great. The one thing they really do focus on here is making sure when people are in rehab that everyone has an individualized program, and they kind of go off how the player's feeling more functionally as well. So yeah, it's been kind of, I suppose, a very different pre-season for me, being in the rehab group, which no one likes being in. But yeah, I suppose I'm lucky enough that with pre-season, majority of it is just footy skills and also running. So I was able to run, which is great. So I got a lot of that in, and still doing a bit of condensed training and not in all the drills, but we're getting there, and they're kind of bleeding in the contact as we go. As I just had the surgery I think it was mid-April. So, but yeah, I've great trust in the team, and they're doing their best to get me back for round one, hopefully.
I can remember you had the surgery as well, because I messaged you the day of it. I had no clue you were going in. I was like, oh Jesus, sorry. I didn't mean to ask you when you're in a hospital bed somewhere after being sedated for a while, like, and I'm badgering this one to try to get her on a podcast. But it sounds like they're using a pretty rational approach and a progressive approach to getting you back to contact. How is your confidence at the moment in that lead in? Like you said, you're kind of going a little bit more extensively with the contacts now. Are you finding your confidence is rising gradually as they start to bleed that stuff in?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think that's a big thing that will come down to the end. In the end, is that kind of confidence with my shoulder and knowing that it is stronger than it ever has been. But yeah, I think that's why they kind of bleed you into contact. And I'm doing all the drills now as well, which is good, and getting into the main group as well, which is, I suppose, the end goal. But yeah, it's going well. I'm hitting the trainers around, knocking them to the ground, and I suppose trying to just show that it is okay, and get those knocks, and know that it probably will be a bit sore, just getting used to it again. But yeah, no, it's going good. And I suppose I'm lucky enough to have such great staff and girls around me as well that are pushing me, but also keeping an eye out too, which is good.
It sounds like you do enjoy the one-on-one aspect of what the therapists and the physiotherapists give you, because I've heard you talking before about that was a little bit foreign to you when you came in, the focus that they put on your prehab. And back then you weren't talking about rehab at all, but unluckily enough, now you're talking about rehab. So it sounds like it's benefited you a lot, that one-on-one kind of aspect to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of playing a professional sport, really, is that they do have these resources, and they can take that time out to just make a plan for Orla, or just make a plan for someone who, let's say, done a knee, or just make a plan for someone who pulled a hammy, or whatever the injury may be, and that there's lots of those resources available. I remember when I did do my shoulder, it was a game in Perth, so we were obviously away, and we flew back that Sunday, and that Monday morning I was in getting an MRI. That Tuesday I had seen the surgeon. That Wednesday I had a decision about what I was doing. So I love the way it's all very quick and everything can be done very fast. But that's just, I suppose, the way AFLW is, and they can get the resources, and they have the money to do that, which is great. And I really like the individualized programs that they do as well. So I suppose, yeah, as it is said, that no athlete is the same. Everyone is individual, has strengths and weaknesses, and they're really good at working on what those players' weaknesses and strengths are, which is great.
So then, have you had a chance to kind of focus on developing and improving, or ironing out a few of those weaknesses that you just talked about, because you've been afforded the more time to yourself and to train by yourself, and the more one-on-one time with the therapists or physiotherapists?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big thing for me this year especially was not going back home to play a GAA season, camogie football, like I usually do. Gave me that bit of extra time to, I suppose, have a rest, which I never usually do, and also keep up AFL skills. Usually when I go back to Ireland, I don't touch a footy for a while, and I just focus on the round ball and focus on Tipperary and playing with them and giving them my all. And then I come back and I'm kind of playing catch up a bit in pre-season as well. So to have that time to kind of work on my kicking and handballing while being in rehab and also keeping up my fitness and strength, I suppose has been great for me that way, which is good. And staying in Australia and doing that was, I think, worked out well for me. So as I said as well, like having access to the physio in that off time, and like Greenie, who's our strength and conditioning guy as well, has been great. So I suppose there is kind of a good thing about that too.
It sounds like you made a decision to look after yourself for once, rather than trying to make and keep other people happy all the time. But you just spoke about there earlier about doing the shoulder against Perth, or injuring it against Perth. And like, obviously there was a number of games after that. So did you feel like you were carrying it for the rest of the season and you couldn't quite give 100%? And if you were, imagine what you could do this year, because you got on the All-Australian team last year and you're carrying a shoulder injury.
Yeah, I think as you said, like it was a lot of that confidence thing. I knew when I did do my shoulder that it actually wasn't a risk unless I did it again and again multiple times with dislocation. So for me, it was just about training and modifying my game in a way that I don't put myself in those risky positions. And there was a lot of talks, I suppose, with risk versus reward at the end of the day, and what would be the best for me as an athlete, not just the best for the team right now. So, but I was the type person, I wanted to play every game and I wanted to get out there as soon as I could again. So I just was very persistent with that, and kind of did everything I could, all my rehab exercises, my strength testing, my tackling, and I suppose just tried to prove to the coaches and physios that I was okay and it wasn't taken away from my game too much. And lucky enough, I did get to play our round 10 game and only ended up missing one game, round 9, played round 10, played semi-final and prelim final, and got through that safely enough, and then had the surgery. So yeah, I'd be interested to see this year what it will look like, and getting back into it. But yeah, I'm definitely excited.
I'd say the easiest way to give them confidence in yourself, by what you were saying earlier, is to knock them over in these drills that you're saying, because they'll know then that your physicality is there and it's still present. But
yeah,
like, you're known in the AFLW for being quite physical and getting a number of dispossessions in each game. So when you talk about limiting your scenarios that were high risk, I would imagine it wasn't limiting the scenarios or refraining from entering the physical kind of scenario on the field. It was more in training, you were reducing your volume of high intensity physical efforts. Would that be fair to say, or am I completely off?
Yeah, I would kind of say that. And as well, in AFLW, I kind of play on the wing, a wing role. So you're kind of like that kind of midfield role with GAA, whereas I'm not playing on ball. I'm not in the action, in which I suppose all that tackling and that kind of high tempo acceleration, deceleration, and lots of physicality. Being on the wing, you kind of get more of a leeway to kind of do that hard running up and down, which I love doing, but also not be involved with the tackling and contact as much. But I think naturally enough, when the game kind of starts and you see the ball in front of you and walk over the white line, you kind of forget about everything that's going on and you kind of just play your game naturally. And I think that's what I did do and had to do. I was probably overthinking my injury the most in warm-ups when I didn't have a footy, or when we were as warm-ups and also in training. Whereas when you get over the line and start playing, you kind of just go naturally into that competitive mode and just try and do the best for your team.
So then obviously you've played a number of seasons now, but you're talking about playing naturally there. The contact side of AFL, did that come naturally to you, or was there a little bit of apprehension going in from the GAA, given that there is quite a difference in the amount of contact that's allowed in the two sports?
Yeah, definitely. I always have this little talk with my head coach, and we always say that in my first year, I feel like I was more watching I was lucky enough to play all the games, but I feel like I was kind of more watching from the fringes and seeing everything happen and didn't get involved as much. Whereas my second and third season, I kind of threw myself in it a lot more, and I was probably playing more of a position that was more natural to me. And I think once you get tackled once, you don't forget that tackle, and you quickly realize that AFLW, they can tackle you from all angles and any angle as well. So you kind of get to do the same too. So I think having that kind of natural speed and being able to close in on players is what kind of helps me to tackle a lot. And even now I'm only properly learning how to tackle correctly. I was kind of just winging it for the last kind of 2 seasons.
You were doing all right, winging it.
Yeah. It's not only till this year where I'm kind of learning more about the technique and proper way, I suppose, of tackling, which is good, and I suppose more safer too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood. But when you're going into the game, then you're saying about playing naturally. It sounds like maybe you're told to go out, and are you given very much kind of a free role, or do the coaches give you specific focus points and specific metrics to hit in each game? Because you do have quite a well-rounded game. Like we're just talking about dispossessions, tackling, etc. But you're not afraid to get a goal as well, and you've got quite a few as well, and very important ones over the last couple of seasons, which probably contributed to you getting selected in that All-Australian team at the end of last year, and contributed to a team win the year before last as well in the grand final.
Yeah, I think we all have line coaches, so there's one for the backs, the mids and the forwards, and they all have, I suppose, what they want each player to do and how to perform. And then I suppose with your run and pass runs or how the game turns out, you might get in good spots to have these shots on goal. I know some games I played very offensively and ended up scoring a goal or two, whereas other games I ended up playing very defensively, just the way the game went, and didn't get near the forward 50 as much. But I think it's just the nature of the game, the opposition you're playing, who you're playing against, and everything ties in that way as well. But for me personally, I think the more I'm kind of getting experience in the game and the more games I am playing, the more I kind of can test out and see how things work. And I suppose if I do something and it turned out well, that you can do it again, or sometimes you might do something that might turn out well and you know not to do that again. And it's all just a learning experience. And I think that's, I suppose, how I build my game, just by playing these games, and I suppose by asking the questions to coaches and teammates, and also just trying it out for yourself.
So with that experience that you've been gaining over the last few years, do you find now you're getting more into your stride and you're finding yourself in the right position more often than you were, say, in previous years? And as well as that, are you finding that you're a lot more efficient with your energy on the pitch now? You're not just running around like a mad joke as you might have been in the first year.
Yeah, definitely. And that's funny you say that. In my first year, I think I was probably doing one of the highest Ks on the team, but I felt like I probably got, like, I'd say even quarter of the disposals I get now. But it's just interesting. Yeah, I think I was doing that pointless running at the start, whereas now you quickly do learn, and you kind of learn about your teammates as well, from playing with them a few seasons. They're running pass runs too. And yeah, as you said, with the positioning at the wing, there's certain ways of setting up with stoppages and with ball ups, and I think I'm still learning that. I look back at clips and I could be on the complete wrong side and at times, but yeah, it's definitely a learning experience, and have the girls out there and talk you through it, which helps a lot. But I'm hoping that each season I can get better at it, and I suppose my knowledge and IQ of AFL can improve as well by even watching the men's games, which are on at the moment as well, and a good few of us go to the Brisbane Lions ones and see how they set up, and you kind of pick out players that kind of play similar positions to you and see what they do, and you're kind of constantly always watching it and learning from things, although you mightn't even realize it at times.
Yeah, and the more exposure you get to the game, the better you'll get at, I suppose, at reading the pictures in front of your face when you get out there. But I heard you speaking before about when you first came over, you felt like you were asking silly questions at times that everybody knew the answers to but you. But it sounds like there now, from what you're saying, that you're not afraid to ask questions of your teammates and your coaches, and that's helping you to gain more experience. Has that been something that you've got more comfortable doing as over time, or have you been just continually badgering them with questions since you landed?
No, definitely. And I suppose we're lucky enough here at Brisbane Lions that all the coaches and girls are very approachable, and kind of there's no real kind of silly questions per se. But I think they probably coming over from Ireland, they probably don't expect the kind of questions, and they actually have to think about the answers at times, because they probably never get asked those questions that, when it comes to game scenarios or ways of setting up, or they might use lingo that I've never heard of before. I remember that happened a couple of times in my first year, and I mightn't even know what it is. So it kind of keeps them on their toes as well, which I think is great. But yeah, I suppose, as I said, the more I play and the more I get used to it, the more you kind of pick up on little cues and tips like that. And I think now, even coming into my 4th season, I'm a lot more vocal than I was in my, let's say, 1st season and 2, which is huge for me. And I think having that kind of intensity and voice by not just a few players, but a lot more players now, definitely drives the standards of training. And you can definitely see that this year in the camp.
When you first went in then, did you have specific players and coaches that you went to with these questions that kind of mentored you? And then it sounds like, from what you're saying there, you're getting more vocal. Are you seeing yourself transition into a more senior role within the squad now, and you're going to be helping some of the rookies along, even if you do feel like you can't offer the same experience that maybe some of the other girls that have been playing the sport for 20 years can?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I know my first year, I depended a lot on our head coach Craig. Did a lot of extra kicking sessions with him, and just getting used to the rules. Lots of sit down meetings with other line coaches about ways players set up and how I even play my role. At that time, I was playing in the half forward line, and yeah, you'd go kicking with lots of different girls before training, and you ask them questions too. But for me, I think it was, just kind of throwing myself in it. And I think there was no real expectations of an Irish player coming out trying to play AFLW. But me personally, I knew myself that I was capable of it, and I had that competitiveness that I wanted to do well in everything I did, even if I hadn't done it before. So I suppose having that competitiveness and having that kind of urge to get better and keep working on these skills is what really, I suppose, drove me, and I suppose wanted me to get better and better every season. So I think that was a big part of it. And even now, as you said, with the voice, I think coming into it, my 4th season, you kind of see these younger players, and I come in like 17, 18-year-olds, and you realize that you're actually one of the older ones nearly on the team. So you just think about how daunting it was for you coming in at that age. And I suppose coming into a new group, learning how to play a role and learning what way different players play as well was huge. So it's just trying to make them feel welcome and help them out in any way you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how a team functions as well, by helping everybody along. And you touched on there that the team had no expectations on you, or the coaches, etc., but they had very little. But it sounds like you had serious expectations of yourself. And that would be similar, I would say, to some of the rookies coming in, the 17, 18-year-olds that you just talked about. So did you set any goals or set any specific goals going into your first season? Or was it very much, I'm going to go over and see how it goes? Because it sounds like you were quite diligent with your skill work and trying to develop yourself as a player in your own time individually. So there must have been something else driving that as well.
Yeah, I think, it was really eye-opener for me coming over at the start. I remember going to one of the skill sessions and just looking at these girls just zip the ball around, and I was still struggling how to even hold the ball in my hands and try and drop it to my feet. And I felt like I was miles off them. But I think you just have to break it down and kind of see how much you progress week by week in that way. Naturally enough, being a good runner and being physically strong, I knew that I do well with the conditioning and gym work, which I actually found and was hard, but I felt like I got through it and was happy with that. And I knew that it would come down to my skills at the end of the day, and even just the IQ of the game. They have rotations which are different, and the timings of coming on and off the field and where to set up. That was probably the hardest part of my first year. And I've said it before in other interviews that you're coming from playing an elite sport back home where you're a dual player playing camogie and ladies football, and have been playing it for years. and you're coming out to play a new sport in a new team, and you're kind of the one messing up the drills, or you're kind of starting at the bottom of that ladder again and trying to build up respect and trust within the team, and also be good and not break down drills and games. So it was definitely daunting. But as you said, like, I suppose anyone that gives up their life in Ireland to come out and play a new sport would have to have some sort of competitiveness and know that they are going to succeed and do well. So I think I just kept my head down and tried to work as hard as I could and kind of see what the other players were doing and kind of copy them in a way and learn as much as I can.
So from what you've said there, it sounds like the tactical and the technical elements of the sport were probably the biggest challenge coming over. You had the physical and the psychological definitely being so competitive.
Yeah.
And we've already touched on the tactical and how that's developed over time in terms of your positioning and how efficient you're being on the field. But in terms of the technical aspect, like, you must have had to put an awful lot of time in at the start to develop those technical skills. And it sounds like the coaches gave you that time, as did the players. How crucial was that? And how much time did you give on a weekly basis, or were you kind of winging it? And then do you still keep on top of those individual technical skills yourself? Because I've seen some videos of you doing some technical skill work with the coaches, and it's obviously something that is so important. And a lot of younger players kind of neglect. They just kind of turn up to training, whatever the sport, whatever the code, and they just do whatever's there at training. Not many actually take the time to say, I'm even going to give 15, 20 minutes here before we start training. How important is it to do that, to put in that extra work?
Yeah, it's so important. And even when I go back home now and I talk to, I suppose, younger groups or younger girls about getting better at camogie and football, I always kind of harp on about practicing outside of training. And I didn't realize that until I was 21 and I came over to Australia. And it's not just about, I think what made me really realize it was you're training only a couple of hours, maybe every few days, and out of the whole week, how much time did you spend working on those skills is what I looked at. So we might be training maybe 15, 20 hours a week, but there's so much more hours each day. So for me, it was just about being at training early and getting out maybe half an hour earlier. A lot of girls do that, and we do some craft. We might do some kicking left and right, do handballs, and just keep getting repetition in. And then after training, we might stay on a bit longer and do some more. And with I suppose the flexibility of being semi-professional, some of the coaches are available throughout the week as well, and you can meet up with them. And a lot of the players now, especially with the pay rise in AFLW, have pushed back on their work, so they're not working as much. So we get to meet up and do some more skills as well. And I think that was a big part of my off season this year. As much as we did running sessions and did gym sessions, we also thought it was really important to do skill sessions. So I suppose a couple of times a week, there was about 7 or 8 of us who met up and just constant kicking, handballing, marking, leading, all that kind of skill work and technical side of things that needs to be kept and topped up in order to get better at. So yeah, a big part of it for me was not what I actually did in training, but actually what I did outside of that.
So then what you did outside of that, everybody talks about learning the new skills and how difficult that is. How difficult is it to unlearn the old habits that you've been doing for 15 years or whatever, playing Gaelic football, and then practice a new skill? Because that's not really talked about that often. And was that frustrating at times, that you're like, revert back to type when you do go under stress, when there are defenders coming at you, or you're fatigued?
Yeah, well, I'm actually lucky enough that since coming to Brisbane Lions, they haven't told me to change my technique too much. So I still kind of naturally hook around the corner on my left and do a kind of Gaelic style kick 95% of the time. It's only really this year where I'm straightening up more and hitting them short 45s. But I think that's the exciting part of the Irish players, that they don't want to take away that natural kind of kick that they have, and also the way they play the game. Like, I know my first year I probably never marked it once and I played on every time, and it was only, I suppose, the last 2 years where I actually marked it and pushed back and maybe rolled on my left or gave a handball. And I think that's the exciting part about these Irish players coming out, and you see it with the likes of other girls like Ash McCarthy, Sarah Rowe, Cora Staunton, everyone's doing it, and they were all, I suppose, you don't know what they're going to do, and you don't know what to expect from the Irish players, which I think is kind of an extra thing we have going on. So it's good that you can kind of keep other teams on their toes, and it's kind of different to what I suppose norm or natural kind of AFL player would do. So that's exciting for us.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, it sounds like it's quite difficult to defend yous out there because, like, they're so unfamiliar with an athlete that plays this way. Do you ever find when you come up against those Irish girls then that you have a better inclination of what they're going to do than some of the Aussie girls might? Even though I know that you don't come up against them in a similar or a contrasting position quite often.
Yeah. It's funny when you see them, even the way they set up at times, when you come across the way they play, you're kind of like, oh, I do the exact same thing, or things like that, which is funny at times. But I think our big thing, and what a lot of the Australian players have kind of talked about, is our running ability and how we just kind of get up and down the line. And I think my head coach Craig actually has seen a Gaelic football game, and he didn't actually realize how much running actually happens in a game, I suppose, because we're running for 60 minutes and we only get half time, but there's no real interchange, and it's kind of different that way. So I think that's where our kind of running power does come from, and the ability to get up and down the field. And a lot of the Irish players are naturally very fit when they do come out, and it's kind of hard to stop them because they just go all the time. But yeah, I definitely see similarities with the way the skills are done, and you can kind of see that they kind of still have that Gaelic kind of style.
So obviously with that Gaelic style comes a lot of experience in very high volume of training. But it sounds like your volume of training is quite high at the moment as well, with your 15 to 20 hours a week, plus your skill work on top of that.
Yeah.
So you said there, it's the things you're doing outside of training that make you the better athlete. But I would imagine, especially with the high frequency of training in pre-season at the moment, it's not even the things that you're doing outside of training in relation to the skill work that's making huge gains, but you've got to look after your body and you've got to get your recovery right to be able to train at such a high frequency. So what sort of things are you doing, and what sort of resources are available to you as a benefit of being with the Brisbane Lions? Is that something that they focus on with you guys in having you in tip-top shape to train?
Yeah, definitely. Recovery is hugely important, and especially as you go into season, they harp on about it even more. So at the moment, I suppose, because there's a lot of us not working as much, we do go to recovery centres and big on saunas, ice baths, and hot and colds, Normatec. Lots of walks are being done as well, just to fill the day. But yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And I suppose before training as well, that prehab. So I suppose doing foam rolling, getting a massage, whatever it is, and then activating your glutes, hammies, whatever I suppose individually you need to work on, as well as after training as well, making sure you're getting fed straight away, having your protein shake, whatever it is, having a good, decent night's sleep. And I think all these 1% things is what adds up to success, as well as what's done on the field. So I'm really big believer in that, and hydration as well, obviously out here in Australia is huge. So, and we have a good group that all the girls are on board with that, and they all take that very seriously. And even after a hard, heavy Saturday session, everyone does the same thing. We might all go for breakfast together, make sure everyone's eating, making sure everyone's hydrating, and then everyone have a nap in the middle of the day, and we might meet up in the evening time and go to the cinema, whatever it may be. Just relaxing and having our downtime too is really important. So it's hugely important, and especially I suppose as you said, like our training is getting higher, and we are going at a higher intensity, and it'll only get higher when games start, and it's important to recover quickly because we play every week. So it's huge.
You're going to get a big gold star from the performance staff there, because you just reeled off absolutely everything that they've been telling you to do, I suppose. But what I was going to ask you there, because you reeled them all off so well, you're definitely listening to them in the meetings, but do you have a personal preference in relation to all that stuff? And I was actually going to ask as well, how important is that downtime to you? And I saw you smile when you said you're going for the walks and the coffees and going to the cinema. So do you find that stuff is even more crucial than maybe the more specific performance recovery kind of stuff that obviously they're preaching to you guys? But if you're doing that stuff and you're not refilling your cup from other areas, it probably won't do the same job.
Yeah, definitely. And I know some people might be really good in one area, let's say nutrition, and mightn't be good on the other side, which maybe take an ice bath or whatever it may be. So it's very important to find that balance, and everyone's individual and likes to work on, has their own way of recovering. And for me personally, it's ice baths. As much as I hate them in winter, they're really good for me, and even getting my shoulder in it now, which can be hard at times, but I think best for me. As well as having that sleep, hydration and nutrition. But yeah, a big part of it is, I suppose, being able to switch off and turn away from training and all that side of things. It's very demanding if you keep thinking about it and keep talking about it. And it might actually wear you out, although you're not even training. You might just be talking about it and you're already wrecked from that. So we're really good at still staying tight as a group and doing things together that doesn't involve footy. And I think that's what makes us such a good team, and is going to make us a good team, is that we have those proper friendships and relationships outside of just training. And it's funny, even on our off days when we're told to go away, reset, on a Sunday, we still all mess each other. Who wants to go for coffee in the morning? Who wants to go for breakfast? Who wants to go to whatever it is, a walk? And at the moment, there's lots of the girls have dogs, so there's lots of dog walks happening, which is fun. But yeah, it's really important to do that, and I think downtime is very crucial part of the sport too. Yeah.
And what you're saying is you're going to need a walk or an ice bath after this, because I'm badgering you with questions about training and playing, etc. But what I wanted to talk about there, because it sounds like you have a great club culture and you're really, really close as a group, was that something that you were surprised was quite similar to your experience with the GAA in both a club and a county setting, that you are so close, and it sounds like you don't leave each other's side, like you're together all the time. So is that very much similar to what we experience in the GAA over here in Ireland?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities, especially when you go to college or school with, I know, like some players back home, or you might play with the same club. You do a lot of things together, and you probably all live close to each other as well. When you come out to Australia, you realise everything's a lot further away than back in Ireland, quickly enough. But I think for me personally, I suppose I knew no one coming out here, so I had to really learn to develop those friendships and trust my teammates from the start. And I remember in my first year, I used to just say yes to go into everything, just I suppose to get to know people better. And it's not just about getting to know them at training, you need to get to know them outside of that too. And definitely having an off season and going out a bit, getting to know each other is important too. But yeah, no, it's similar back home, and that's what I love about the team here, is that we are so close. And it was the same back with Tipperary as well. The girls were all so close, meeting up as well outside of training, whether it's going for coffees again. That seems to be the big thing at the moment, and cafes too. But it's definitely a big part of what makes a team successful. And I think as well as that, it's not just the players, but also with the staff too, and having good relationships with them. And it's really important for me personally to get to know my coaches and head coaches and staff and physio, because you're trusting them as much as you're trusting your teammates. And our coaches and staff are very good at that. And I think that's what makes them so approachable, and that's what makes us so successful too.
So as a group being so close, then do you do much talking as a group as in relation to what your specific goals are for the year? Because obviously the year before last, you won the grand final, won the whole thing. And then last year getting defeated in the preliminary final, unfortunately. Have you spoken about what your goals are for this season yet? Or you probably maybe you're leaving that to a couple of weeks before the season starts?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a conversation we've had, even after that prelim final. As much as hard as it was to watch back, and we done our review and talked through it a week after we lost, and kind of parted there, and we kind of set aside what, I suppose, that we don't want to be in this position again, and we want to get to a grand final, and that's the ultimate goal. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more talk about it this pre-season with regard to not want to be in that position again. And I think specifically after having that success in 2021, or in that grand final and winning that premiership, and then to lose a prelim the following year, it does take a lot out of it, and you realize it's not the same, and you just want to get back to being in that position again, of being in the grand finals. So hopefully that's the plan this year, and we go well with our group stages, and kind of don't take any team for granted, and kind of step up and play as best we can each game, and hopefully get to some finals.
Very diplomatic answer there. Good job. But yeah, like that, you have to talk about it if you're going to go and achieve it, I suppose. And that would be something that is similar to the GAA, but maybe not in a way that Irish people can be a little bit modest and bashful and not talk about the ultimate prize at times, because you could be seen as cocky if you're talking about going winning championships, etc. So are there many differences in the culture around that kind of goal setting that you see between the AFL and the GAA? And if not there, what are the other major differences that you see between the two codes? Obviously, one being professional, it's going to have a lot more resources, but what could be brought from the AFLW and learned and brought back to the GAA and implemented to improve the standard of the game and improve just the delivery of everything over here?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think in the last few years we've definitely seen a step up with the GAA, especially women's sport, with regards to camogie and ladies football. And to be honest, I always get asked that question when I come back, like, what are the differences, what can we do better? And it's very similar in a way, considering it's amateur back home, everyone's still working full time, or they're in college or school and still training just as much as they are here. As you said, like, the big difference probably is just the resources available, because of it's a semi-professional sport out here, and having that access to doctors, physios, podiatrists, nutritionists, whatever it is, having more of a quicker access to that is probably the biggest difference. The team is pretty much still the same. I think both teams I've been involved in back home and also here, the culture is very strong, and there's a good connection, which I think is really important, and everyone kind of trusts each other and has respect for each other, and there's no one that really like stands out or takes away from that. Everyone has a voice, and everyone is the leader in their own way, which I think is really important. But yeah, I think outside of that, it's very similar, and I think a lot of girls here, if they do come over to Ireland and they'd see how similar they are, and how much that the GAA does do regarding it's only an amateur sport, which I think is great.
I'm going to ask you a tough one now, because over the last week on Twitter and over the last couple of months, I suppose, there have been people talking about ladies Gaelic football and how it probably needs a couple of rule changes in relation to the allowances towards a bit of physicality in the game. And obviously we've talked about physicality and how you're playing a much more physical sport over in Australia. But would you see any benefit to the GAA and ladies Gaelic football if they did bring in maybe more of an allowance towards contact, but not to the same degree, obviously, as AFL? Would it increase the entertainment value, do you think? And would it be beneficial? And this is completely up to your personal preference as well. And I apologize for asking a really tough question.
No, that's okay. Well, personally, for me, I think it would be a great idea. I know in recent years, back home, GAA, especially ladies football and camogie, has become a lot more professional in the aspect of every girl's doing gym now a couple of times a week. They're doing a lot more intense training, and they're pushing themselves. They're probably treating themselves like a professional athlete with regards diet, nutrition, training, what they do outside of training, recovery. And I don't think it's been rewarded for on the field when you can't, I suppose, have that physicality as much as you can. And girls are getting stronger, and a lot of girls do want to are pushing for big numbers in the gym, and I know a lot of girls who do lift heavy and can bench heavy and can squat heavy, and I suppose they're not getting to really show that they are that more powerful, stronger athlete, and they're not getting rewarded for it by, let's say, getting a free against them or getting a yellow card or whatever it may be. And I think the game is evolving, and you can probably see it with the men's now, especially with the likes of, I suppose, the All-Ireland final, which was just on with Limerick, and how big and strong and tall they are, physicality, compared to, let's say, the All-Ireland final that would have been on 10, 15 years ago. I suppose the athletes just completely changing now, and I think it's because we have access to all these gyms, and people are more educated about nutrition and about strength and conditioning, and they want to be better as athletes. And I think it's really important that they are rewarded for that on the field by having that bit more physicality. And it definitely does make it more entertaining, I think, when, as much as people love seeing goals in AFLW and good marks, nothing gets the crowd going more than a rundown tackle or a big hit. And it really drives the team as well, and drives the intensity up a notch, which I think is really important. And I think it really add entertainment for the people in attendance too, and for the team itself.
I 100% agree with you. I think they're allowing the lads to be a little bit more physical. So why not the ladies? And as you said, the caliber of athlete that's there, and they're trying to grow the game there too. So I think it's probably time for a rule change, given that the rules have been in place for many, many, many years, long before me and you were alive. So they need to change it. They need to adapt with the times, as you're saying. But then, there have been some comments about the AFLW and in the past, and I'm not even going to rehash them here, but they've been less than favorable comments. I suppose they haven't been too positive around what it offers to the GAA, but there definitely are benefits that the AFLW offers to GAA and Irish athletes. So what do you think that those benefits are? Is it that professional pathway for young girls into being a professional athlete? Or are there any other ones that you can think of?
Obviously there's lots of talks about it, and a lot more players, especially this year. You can see it big more with the new teams as well. There's more Irish players coming out, which is great to see. And for me personally, as you said, it is that professional side of things. As much as everyone loves playing with their county and Colgan football, which I love playing as well, to have the opportunity to get paid to play a sport is phenomenal. And how quickly the AFLW has grown, and even this year with a 94% pay rise, is huge. And I think they want to professional by 2026, which is great for women's sport, not just in Australia but globally as well. And as you said, that part of it is kind of every athlete's dream, to get paid to play. So having that, and having, even when I came out here at the start, seeing professional life, what it's like, and seeing all the resources you have, and the gyms and the training and what everything looks like, it's just real breathtaking, and it's a real good environment to be around. And especially GAA players not getting to even travel as much and go on J1s, they usually have to give up their summers, or they can't go traveling because they're in championship as well. But to actually get to come to Australia and live on another side of the world and kind of be more independent. And I think as much as I've gotten, I suppose, to become a good athlete and to learn a new sport, I've also become a lot more independent, I suppose, with living out of home and living with teammates, and just being in a different country, and kind of taking that responsibility on yourself is huge. I think it's definitely beneficial. And although I hear some managers or coaches talk about how it's kind of ruining the game back home, I think they should really applaud how well the Irish players are doing out here, as they've kind of given them that base with their power, speed, skills, and then for Irish players to come out and, I suppose, get playing straight away and not even have to wait a couple of years sometimes like the men do, and play straight away, is definitely a credit to the management back home, who have developed these kind of GAA players into AFLW players.
Yeah, and they should use it as a positive, I suppose, that they've made a big impact on that player's athletic development. And like at the same time, you don't hear it in relation to other sports. Like you don't hear people saying, "Oh, it's a pity Robbie Henshaw's playing with the Irish rugby team and he's not playing with Westmeath." You know, like so they're happy for them to go on in the men's game into professional sport, but then some people maybe are being a little bit closed-minded. But it's new, I guess. And as you said, there's a number of new recruits going over, Irish rookies, and you've just spoken about two components of that move. So what would be your advice to those new recruits going over and any young girls with aspirations of going to play in Australia? Firstly, in relation to what they're doing on the field, and secondly, in relation to what they're doing off the field and all the new experiences that it's going to bring in that regard as well.
I suppose on the field, I think a big thing is just kind of taking the training as it comes. Don't be too hard on yourself with breaking down drills, as I said, or not understanding things. So I suppose taking the time to ask those questions if you don't understand something, or ask a teammate, and still just staying with it and just knowing that it will get easier, I think is the main thing on field. And off the field, as I said, it's really important just to get to know your teammates, get to know your staff, who you're working with, who's working for you, what that's about, and not just buy into just the training side of things, but also the whole club as a whole, because at the end of the day, it is a business. It is a big organization with lots of people involved, so getting to know them. And I think a big thing for me is living with teammates. That has definitely helped me a lot. If I compare to living with, if I lived on my own or lived with people that weren't teammates, I think my experience would have been a lot more different. And you quickly learn that those players become your best friends. Living with them and getting to do everything together is a good part of it. So I think that's an important part too.
And say yes to every excursion outside of it as well.
I'll keep inviting you then.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure they'll get plenty of coffees in, same as yourself, in the cafes and sit down chats. But for now, we will move on to quickfire questions. So the first one is proudest achievement to date.
I probably have two, I'm going to say. So I think winning the grand final against Adelaide Crows in Adelaide Oval, and also winning the intermediate All-Ireland Ladies Football final against Meath in 2019 was huge as well. I just like playing in big stadiums, and winning on big days is huge to me.
I'm sure, yeah, they were similar experiences, like, and those days you don't forget very quickly. And we'll give a shout out to our mutual friend Megan Ryan, who, when you won that game in Adelaide, was told by the security to get down off the pillars when she was up standing trying to get you over and get your attention. But she did get your attention anyway, so I suppose that was a win for her.
She's probably the loudest person in Adelaide Oval that day, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure. Next one is favourite athlete of all time.
Yeah, this one was interesting. I'd probably say Katie Taylor, and I think growing up, I suppose I wasn't that big on watching athletes in sport when I think about younger, but since Katie Taylor has had her success, how much she has changed women's sport. And I remember even my aunties and going up to her homecoming and women just crying after she won about what she's done for women's sport is phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's not the first time she's been named as well. Like she's the sports person that makes me cry the most as well. I'm always fucking crying when she's on and she's winning things, because she's constantly progressing. Like she's never stopped. She's always been doing more and more and more. And like, just when you reflect back on the fact that she had to pretend to be a boy initially so that she could box, it's like, it's crazy how far she's took the sport and female sport in general. Next one is artists you've been listening to a lot recently.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of gone back more old school. Listen to a lot of old Rihanna, going away to training.
What's the song then that you're going for? Are you going for Pondy Replay, Umbrella, or is it any of the... What was the one she recorded up in Belfast? It was a dance track. She had a video for it. I remember it was on the news on the RTE61.
Yeah, definitely a mixture of everything depending on the vibe and if we're going to training or coming home from training.
Yeah, and it pleases everyone, I'm sure, as well. So like there's no going wrong with that with Rihanna. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
I think personally for me, it's probably just to control the controllables. A lot of the time, especially in the last year, I've tried to control things that I physically can let's say when I got injured or things that came up. And I think it's just important to look at what's ahead of you and what you can control and not try and just change everything.
Super, great message there for everybody. And then lastly, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh, I think the big thing I'd probably tell myself when I'm 18 is that I suppose life isn't just like a straight line, and there's different paths of getting to where you want to get. For me, when I was back in school, I remember 18 doing my leaving cert. I wanted to get good points, wanted to become a PE teacher, wanted to be a PE teacher off in the summers, and then still playing camogie and football. And I had this straight line of what way I wanted my life to look. And if I saw myself now doing a complete 360, I suppose not finishing that degree, starting something else, being over in Australia, playing sport and getting paid for it, it's definitely, completely changed. And I think there's lots of different avenues of success and getting where you want to get, and don't be drawn back by something that comes up in the meantime.
Absolutely, and it never goes in a straight line, but at the same time that could still happen, I suppose, given that they're helping you with your studies over in Australia. And I would say the other piece of advice you'd give would probably be hold on to that Australian passport with your life.
Definitely. Since COVID and everything, it's just been, definitely been a blessing to have that and not have to deal with all exemptions and travel exemptions for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully this time around you'll get home for Christmas with the new season, the way that it's structured, and it'll be played off before that. So best of luck with the new season. Best of luck to the rest of the squad in Brisbane as well. Hopefully you can go one better than last year, or two better, and go and win the final again. Thanks a million for coming on. Great message there for all young athletes, Gaelic footballers, AFL players or Aussie Rules players, any sport, any code. And look after the shoulder and look after yourself. And we're all proud of what you're doing. So hopefully another All-Australian team this year.
Great. Thanks so much for having me as well.